Hi guys, it's Wombat, and today we're going to talk about how you can modify your mod truck. So, how to mod a mod is today's question, and the reason this is today's question is because I recently did a haul using the wonderful, beautiful overfloater Kenworth K100-E. I used it as an 8x8, even though the truck isn't actually available from overfloater as an 8x8. I also made some other changes to the truck, and in the live stream where I used it, I added all the information about the changes I made to the truck so that you could add it yourself to the truck or apply it to other truck mods. But I got a lot of questions about how and where, and so I figured I'm going to do a video showing you exactly what I did to the truck and how I did it, and also talk a little bit about other things you can do to your truck mod to make it more personal. Because the changes we make to the trucks are personal. It's not like you can make the changes and then release the truck as your own mod. That is not allowed. That is not compliant with the licensing agreements. But you can make these changes for personal use. So that is what we're going to do to avoid situations like this, where the 400-ton transformer, or as Ben Affhandy, the creator of the 400-ton trailer mod, calls it, the mega Trafo. Because you can't hold a mega Trafo with just a 8x4. As you can see, the wheels are just spinning. It's impossible. So we need to make some changes. And before we go into the mod itself and start making changes, I'm gonna go quickly through the changes that I made to the truck. The first thing, there we go, obviously was to make it an 8x8. My thinking here was that the original 8x4 could be modified by anyone IRL to make it an 8x8. So making this an 8x8 didn't feel like it was way out of the ordinary. But the next change I made kind of was because I made changes to the curb weight. The curb here is KERB, not CURB. Curb weight adds weight over the axles. And I more or less tripled that for this truck, because you want as much of the wheels to be on the ground and not having a light truck where you only have wheel spin on all 4 axles. So I made it basically 3 times as heavy, defending that by saying that, well, inside the chassis you could add a lot of lead, perhaps. In a way, I needed that to be able to, even though it is very slowly, actually get up hills like this one here. And the final thing I did to the truck was to compensate for the triple weight I added to the truck. So I gave the truck 10% more torque than it has using the Cummins 605 horsepower engine. That does not mean that this truck has 60 more horses. I think it has something like 30 more horses or so, but still, yes, I did a tiny modification to the engine, but that is all the changes I made for this truck to be able to climb hills like this and make it more or less all the way across America. And we did 1,000 miles live just a few days ago when this is recorded. So now it's time to go through where you make these changes, and also take a little look at what other things you can do to modify a truck so that it better suits your needs. So let's get started. So the first thing I did was I downloaded the Kenworth K100-E by overfloater, and there is a link to this web page in the video description for you. So once I have the truck mod downloaded, I usually extract it, right click, 7-zip, extract to ATS 136, and then drag that folder into my mod folder. It doesn't matter for the game whether you are using a mod like this, a .scc file or .zip for that matter, or if you actually extract it and add this folder into the mod folder. As long as this, when extracted and you double click it, has the mod description, manifest and JPEG file in the root folder. If you only see a folder here, then double click that folder, and if you then find these 3 files and the rest of the folders, then you go one step back and drag that folder into the mod manager instead, sorry, the mod folder instead. But in this case, yeah, they are directly in the root of this folder, so drag that into the mod folder and start up the game if you like. The reason I do this, there are 2 reasons. First is that in some cases I want the original mod as well as my extracted version of it in the mod folder, so that I via the mod manager can go back and forth between the original mod and my modified mod if I want to compare changes, for instance. If you want to do that, make sure that you also change this folder name to something a little bit different. So I'm going to call it Wombat ATS instead. And the reason you do not want the folder and the actual mod to have the same name when you put them in the mod folder is because the game is going to treat these 2 as the same mod. It's not like it by magic is going to accept the differences between these 2 and present both versions as the same mod. No, it's just going to pick one of them and show one of them in the mod manager. So to make sure that the game actually show you both of them at the same time in the mods folder, make sure that one of them is, or both of them are differently named and doesn't have the exact same name. That of course doesn't mean that you in the mod manager will see that there is a difference between the 2. They will look identical. So to make sure that you very easily can see the difference in these 2 mods, I'm opening the manifest file. It's an SII file, and you open it with Notepad, and there in the display name I change Kenworth K100-E to Wombats Kenworth K100-E, so that you in the mod manager will have a mod that is named Wombats Kenworth K100-E and one that is named like the original one, just Kenworth K100-E. And since we're already inside the manifest file, let's just go through these 2 lines in this case. If you see something like this, the compatible _ version brackets 136 or 135, remove it. That way you can at least try to use the mod regardless of what version of the game you are running. It won't say that it is incompatible for whatever reason. That of course doesn't mean that the mod will actually work regardless of game version, but that at least gives you a chance to test it to see if it works. So that's just a free tip for you. The other reason I prefer to work with extracted mods is partially that it's very easy to find the mod, because a folder is always listed at the top or the bottom, whereas the mods are listed in alphabetical order. So if you have a folder there, it's pretty easy to find it. It's usually, or always in my case, at the very top of the mods list or the mod folder, and also because I save a couple of clicks every time I want to edit the mod. I don't first have to open an SCS file and then start going through the different folders before opening the SII file I want to use. I can just open the folder and start looking for the SII file. And also because when I save that SII file, I won't have to confirm that I want to save the changes to the SCS file. So again, I'm saving a couple of clicks and it's easier to find the mod. We have, as you can see in this case, these folders: Automat, Def, Material, Sound, UI, Unit and Vehicle. And there are a couple of folders here that we are going to take a look at. Most of them are out of the scope. Automat, I'm not going to bother with that. It's just a ton of different mat files in different folders. It is not important for the scope of this video. Same goes for material, UI and unit. But in this video we're going to take a look at the def folder and vehicle folder and sound folder. The rest of them we won't look at. We're going to start by taking a look at the folders that I made changes to, or the files in the folders that I made changes to for my truck to become an 8x8, increased weight, and of course a little bit more torque. All of that was done in the def folder. The def folder in this case has a camera folder and a vehicle folder. In some cases you won't find a camera folder, and in other cases you'll find both of these and then some more folders. In any case, the only thing we care about is the vehicle folder. Then you have add-on hookups, truck company, dealer, desktop. I don't care about that either for this video. Instead we're going to focus on the truck folder, because this is where all the magic happens. Double click the truck folder and you'll have the different trucks that is included with this mod. It's just one truck in this case and in most cases, so click that truck. And then we have several other folders. It's out of the scope looking at how you can make different accessories compatible with the different accessory slots you see on a truck when you configure it. So we're not going to care about that, and we're not going to care about the cabins either, because we're not going to make new cabins for this truck. That is way out of the scope and you need Blender for that, so we don't care about that. But we do care about the chassis. And this truck comes with 12 different chassis configurations, and it just happens to be that I know that the 8x4s that I want to make changes to are these two files. I know that because the name of it is an 8x4 and the info here says that it is an 8x4, whereas this one is a short 4x2, just as you can see it in game. This one is a simple 4x2, you can see that in game as well. We have a 6x4 here and another 6x4 here and another 6x4 here, etc, etc. And down at the bottom we have a prime mover, a 6x4, and you'll see that in game it's named prime mover. We don't care about those either. What we do care about, as I said, was this 8x4s, and we have two of them, and I'm going to make changes to one of them now. And you only have to make changes to one of them. Just make sure that you pick the right one for the job when you select it in game, and that is depending on which cabin, among other things, that you want to use. If we look at the cabins for 6A.SII, you'll see that it is suitable for number 1 and number 3 cabin, whereas this one is suitable for cabin 2 and 4, and there just happens to be 4 cabins for this truck. So 2 of the cabins are available for this version of the chassis, and the other 2 are available for this version of the chassis. And since I don't know which chassis I want to use, or maybe I do, but if I don't, make changes to both of them. Just renaming it 8x8 doesn't change anything, other than you in-game will see it as an 8x8. But I'm only doing this for myself, so I don't care about that. The info here is just information about the mod, also listed in-game, but it doesn't actually make it an 8x8. So I'm not gonna care about that either. Same goes for the gas tanks, 200 gallons. Well, that's just information. It's not what it actually You can't change this to 400 gallons and think that that will actually make it a 400 gallon chassis. Instead, that is actually changed here. Make this a very large gas tank if you like. If you never want to refuel your truck again, go ahead, go bonkers if you like. But I'm going to focus on what I did to my truck. So we have some very interesting lines here. Front axle 1 and 2 and the 2 rear axles. They are called power axles and they are set to true. This means that if we copy that and overwrite false on power axle 1 and on 0, this means that now all 4 axles are powered. So this truck is now magically an 8x8. We could go bonkers and say that we want the second steering axle to be a fixed axle instead. Or we could say that we just want this truck to go in a straight line. You won't be able to steer at all now. If you just change all of them to true, it's not like the truck is gonna be steering fantastically. You'll have 2 axles steering in one direction and the 2 others in the other directions. No, they're all gonna steer in the same direction. So, but feel free to fool around with this and see what you like and dislike and what you want your truck to do. But these should be set to false, otherwise you're gonna have a hard time getting anywhere. We also have the liftable axles, and as you can see, the second steering axle now powered and steering axle is also liftable. You could change, say for instance, axle 2 or 3 to be liftable as well if you like. If you try to make all 4 of them liftable, you will probably not be able to go anywhere, but your truck might look very cool if you do. But it's still going to be just a pretty truck to look at. Again, go ahead and try it out, do some testing for yourself and see what you can do. As I mentioned earlier, I made 3 changes to my truck. I changed the number of powered axles and I changed the curb weight. The curb weight is how heavy the truck is over the 4 different axles. So out of the box we have 4,800 kilos, I think it is, on the first axle, and 1,800 kilos over the 3 next axles. And there's nothing strange about that because this is a cab over. So of course you have over the first axle the both the cab and the engine, so that is obviously very, very heavy. And these 3 which are behind the cabin and the engine is of course much, much lighter. So what I wanted to do with my truck was to make all of this much heavier, and I think I ended up with this one being 5,600 kilos. This one was around 5,400, and I think I did the same for these 3. So basically I made a truck almost 3 times as heavy as it was prior to my modding. Play around with it, do some testing, see what you find that to work for you. This video is made just for you to get an idea of different things you can do to your trucks. That's all. So now that we've made some changes to one of the chassis, you can go ahead and make the same changes to this chassis. I'm not going to do that now. Instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about the engine, because I did make one change to the engine as well, and I did a change to the Cummins 600 horsepower engine, and it just so happens to be that this one sounds very familiar. So let's double click it, and yeah, the name of this engine in game is Cummins N14 600 chipped. So this is the engine I want to make changes to. This is just information. So even though this says 605 horsepower, you can't change this to say 1600 and think that you have a 1600 horsepower engine, but you will have a 600 horsepower engine that is named a 1600 horsepower engine. Instead, what you do is you change this, the torque, and that is the only number you have to change both the torque and the horsepower of the engine. This doesn't mean that the truck has 3000 Newton meters of torque. It just means it's just a number which is then translated into actual torque and horsepower. So when I say that I add 10% torque to this truck, that just means that I changed it from 3000 to 3300, this number. That's all I did, and that is then translated by the game into actual horsepower, which is probably some, I would say, another 30 horsepower perhaps, and then maybe 150-200 Newton meters of torque. That is the changes I made to this truck. You could go bonkers and give yourself a ridiculously powerful engine if you like, but that is not the scope of this video. I'm just showing you what you can do. Again, these are the 3 changes I made to the truck, but we're going to take a quick look at some of the other things you can do with your truck. If we go back to the dev folder again, you'll have sounds. You have sounds in here as well, but these are just SII files with information on when to use the different sounds that you have, so no, don't mind that. Instead, you'll find the actual sounds here, and you have a few different sounds depending on what engines you use, and you have different sounds depending on if you're inside the cabin, interior or exterior. So that is, exterior is of course then outside the cab. You have different sound levels, the same sound probably, but different sound levels depending on whether you are in the external folder or in the internal folder, because the truck engine is more quiet from inside the cabin than it is from the outside of the cabin. So this is where you make those changes. And also you'll find other changes that you can make for other sounds as well. If we go to the internals, you'll see that you, for instance, have the turn signal sounds here. You don't have them in the external folder because you can't hear the turn signals from outside the cabin. You can only hear them from inside the cabin. So you'll find those here, and you'll find some other sounds in here, vipers for instance, that you won't hear or find in the external folder. So as long as you create and save OGG files using the same file names you find here, you can make your truck or your turn signals or whatever beeps and blimps you want to change sound completely different from what they originally do. Go ahead, knock yourself out, have fun with that. Last folder we're going to take a look at is the vehicle folder here. Go to truck, upgrade and paint job. And I'm not going to talk about the other things here because they are way out of the scope, and you will probably need some Blender knowledge to find any of these useful for the changes you want to make. But I want to mention the paint job folder because in many cases I've downloaded truck mods that doesn't have any templates, and in some cases you just want to add a logo to a pre-existing paint job, or you want to add your name to a paint job that comes with the truck. They are all found here. So each DDS file here represents its own paint job that is available for this truck. In some cases, different paint jobs represent part of a paint job, but in most cases there is one DDS file per paint job. So by opening that, using GIMP for that, or you can use any other application that is able to read DDS files. Paint, for instance, or Photoshop, of course, are two other examples. There are DDS plugins for them. You can make changes to the paint job and then knock yourself out and have fun. Once you're satisfied with the changes that you want to make to the truck, you could either just keep it as a folder in the mods folder, or you can make it an actual SCS file if you like. And in this case, we have the mod folder here, still have to be located or placed here when you start creating the SCS file. So select all of it, 7-zip, add to archive. Make sure that you are using compression level store. You don't want to use ultra, maximum, normal, fast, fastest. You just want to make store. And compression method, nothing. There's nothing here because you do not want to actually compress the file. That is also out of the scope for this video. But again, it's very important that you are standing here when you are compressing it, because you don't want the folder itself to be compressed as well. That will totally ruin the mod. And once you've made sure that you are using zip format and store and no compression, you press OK, and everything is made into a zip file. Once you have that zip file, you can right click it, rename it to SCS instead. Yes, and there you have it. Now it is a mod. So I'm gonna cut that from here, go to, oops, not the documents, to mods, paste it, there it is. There is my new mod. Remove the folder, we don't need it anymore. And you don't even have to reselect it in the active mods list if you already had it, the folder that is active in the mods list in the mod manager. Automatically the game will then use the SCS file instead, because it is named exactly like the folder was. Disregard the .scs thing of it. It's just the file name, not the extension that matters. So that's it. That's how simple you create a mod from a folder. So there you have it. That is the end of my very lengthy video on how to modify truck mods, and I hope this video got you at least a little bit interested in finding out more, and for that there is a link in the video description to the wiki page with all the information from SCS about the different settings and variables you can change and what you can change them to in the game, if you want to read up on other things you can do to trucks or trailers or whatever, because there's a lot of information on trailers, trucks and everything else in game on the wiki page. And the way you make modifications for trailers and other things are in many ways very similar to how you do it with truck mods. So I hope this gets you going, getting you started on truck modding and modding. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe as well, and take care everyone. Bye bye.